This episode is scripted, narrated, recorded and edited by Newell Fisher, with script assistance by John Ruths. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast episode 67, in which we will be analysing section 9 of the 1978 film, The Warren of the Snares. Apologies for the later than usual episode. Due to a change in my working life, episodes will probably be coming out later in the week from now on. Before we move on to the subject matter of this episode, a listener in Germany by the name of Nina Pokoyewski has been in touch on the subject of rats following last week's episode. She says, quote, "I own pet rats, and since I got them I noticed that in many films, whenever rats appear, they appear with a squeaking noise, but usually rats make no audible sounds at all. They communicate via ultrasound, and only when they feel attacked they squeak a little, for example when I want to lift them out of the cage but they don't feel like it. I understand that putting in that nasty sound in this film makes their appearance more shocking for the viewer. I always jumped at that sound when I watched the film as a child, and usually rats are supposed to be disgusting creatures in films, and the squeaking sounds add to that image, but as a rat enthusiast I feel kind of responsible for correcting that image of the squeaking rat." End quote. Thank you for that information, Nina, and I am happy to have someone defend rats in this way, having owned some myself years ago. They make lovely pets and are much misunderstood. Claire Kitchener from Essex in England has also been in touch with more lost paragraph information. The lost paragraph is included in the One World Modern Classics hardcover edition of Watership Down, published in Great Britain and Australia in 2018 and reprinted in 2019. This appears to be new information. Presumably, this edition was based on the Puffin Penguin manuscript, the first to include the lost paragraph. So then, on with the episode. Section 9. The Warren of the Snares. This section covers from 26 minutes 10 to 29 minutes 20, and the equivalent chapters from the book are chapters 13, Hospitality, 14, Like Trees in November, 16, Silverweed, and 17, The Shining Wire. Chapter 15, The Story of the King's Lettuce, does not appear in the film.
There's that smell again. It's almost like man. Oh, it's you, is it?
One aspect of the latter half of the last section that I didn't comment upon was the impressive animation of heavy rain throughout it that seems to be a main factor in what drives the group to accept the invitation of the stranger Cowslip to his warren. And now there is a total change of atmosphere and colour palette, as the dark, subdued colours of the last scene are replaced with the orange and purple of the interior of this mysterious new warren. Purple picking out the walls of burrows, and orange the entrances to burrows. Of course, in reality, it would look no different to the warren they have just left, but these colours, as well as the harp music that now plays, are conveying something far more subtle than the mere colour of soil. We see Silver coming down a run before stopping and sniffing the air. He joins Dandelion further off down another run, as the latter comments that the place seems to almost smell of man, or humans, as we would more likely say now. The view pans right past strange patches of green moss, mould. What would be growing underground here? It seems unnatural somehow. We see the group arrive in a large underground burrow. In the book, this is much commented upon, as it is the inspiration for the honeycomb on Watership Down, but here it receives no such treatment. We see flayrah, or good quality food grown by humans, on the floor. Further off, Cowslip is sitting with his back to the group. To the left, two other members of the warren can be seen. This strangely impersonal welcome contrasts with that portrayed in the book, which, despite the nature of this warren, is far warmer. But here we are on the clock, and there is no time to be subtle in driving home the alien nature of this place. And now Cowslip, with Denholm Elliot's wonderfully offhand manner, expresses politely faked surprise at their arrival. We briefly see the group from the front, with the flayrah now appearing in the foreground, below a brick wall that forms part of this burrow in the background. John Ruths has made the interesting point that this brick wall in the book is located in another part of the warren, near the strange artistic shapes that Strawberry shows Hazel, so its inclusion here may be a subtle reference to that episode. It may also be a nod towards the missing Strawberry. I think it is Blackberry who comments on what a large warren this is, as the group looks around them curiously. Cowslip brushes past this comment and invites them to help themselves to the flayrah. He says that the man leaves fresh roots daily, or throws it out, as Cowslip puts it. This is a large and significant contrast to the book, in which the food is left in a nearby pasture and carried back to the warren, and it is not mentioned until the group have spent a night there. The carrying of the flayrah back to the warren in the book is a significant communal event, but here it is just directly left, implying some kind of hole above that it is dropped down, and also implying that there is a human who knows the exact location of the warren to the extent of knowing exactly where to leave food. The ever-vigilant Hazel questions this mention of a man, but Cowslip again brushes past the question by saying in his casual offhand manner that there are plenty of empty burrows for the group to sleep in. Hazel's next question, where are all the others, elicits an angry reaction from Cowslip that cannot be missed and is out of character with his previous casual manner. It signals to the audience very clearly that his apparent offhand manner is only for show. However, he immediately recovers and says that they can eat all they like and will be left to themselves. He leaves the group, along with two other members of the warren who we also see leave in the background. There is no hint of the friendly hospitality of the book. Here the group will only receive catering. In this shot, a beam of light from above dominates, possibly showing how the food ends up in this burrow. This beam of light makes this great burrow very different to the one that appears in the book. Here, the implication is that the Great Burrow is partly formed from using previous human activity, whereas in the book this feature of the warren only applies to the area where the shapes were made. This partly human part of the Great Burrow, combined with a beam of light shining through a hole in the roof through which delicious food is seemingly provided daily, seems to imply an almost religious theme, with a deity providing sustenance in a space that is almost constructed in their honour, that deity being a human. This scene therefore provides some quick shortcuts to what may be going on in this warren, because where you have a deity that provides for you, something is usually expected in return. That can merely be worship, of course, or something else. So now we cut to the other scene, besides Bigwig on the Road, that I clearly remember being used to promote this film when it came out in 1978, and no wonder, as it is wonderfully shot. It implies some passage of time since the last shot, though probably not enough for the group to have spent even one night in this warren, as opposed to the 2 nights they spend there in the book. And the first word uttered in the scene is where, the word that made Cowslip's mask so clearly slip. As we see the group feeding from behind, Fiver asks where everyone is in this warren, followed by Hazel commenting that you can't ask where anything is in this place. Significantly, Fiver is not feeding, but is separate from the group, looking about him and sniffing the air. And now, as the camera pulls back, Pipkin gets surely his best line in both book and film, as he says the rabbits of this warren seem sad, like trees in November. This is, of course, the line that gives chapter 14 its name, except that in the book his actual line is, "But they put me in mind of trees in November," which Adams paraphrases as the chapter title, though still strangely presenting it as a quote. As Pipkin speaks, the technique that makes this shot so special begins. First, the group are framed by an entrance to the burrow, with a member of this warren clearly watching them to one side. And now the camera tracks right to another entrance, with another rabbit watching them with a strangely lethargic look on its face. And now we are seeing the group from the side, as Bigwig says he still thinks this is a change for the better. As Fiver asks if they really think the man puts the food out of kindness, the camera tracks right again, to another entrance, this time with 3 rabbits watching them. Our view of the group is now nearly from the front. The music is becoming deeper and a little more ominous. Blackberry comments that the food isn't poisoned, something he can presumably only know at this point by virtue of still being alive. As the camera tracks right once again, Fiver comes out with what he thinks, that the warren seems, quote, unnatural, evil and twisted, end quote. This time the rabbit watching them looks back towards the next hole as Fiver says this. At least that's what I thought he or she does. Then I checked more closely. Actually, what this rabbit does is a lot more chilling, looking directly at us, the watching humans, just as Fiver is saying his line about how he really feels about this place. I have Instagrammed this frame for reference. As we arrive at the last entrance, with a frontal view of the group and no watching rabbits, Fiver adds that the place feels like mist. As he adds, like being deceived and losing our way, this incredible shot ends and cuts to a closer shot of him. The shot has lasted 30 seconds, a very long duration for a single shot in a cartoon, and is what must have been a very rare animated circular dolly shot, one that would be achieved in live-action filming at that time with the use of a camera mounted on a circular dolly track. I'm sure such a shot has been used in animation since then, but I'm not aware of any previous examples. I'd be very interested to hear if there are any, because this seems to be an example of the filmmakers, not previously having worked with animation, having simply decided to do what live-action filming can do, unaware that it was not used in animation at that time. A fascinating way for such innovation to happen. Other cartoons have since then emulated such live-action techniques, such as the dolly zoom used in Ratatouille 2007, in which Remy watches a chef on TV. But I think this shot is a very early and rare example of such live-action emulation in an animation. As ever, I'm happy to be proved wrong. Returning to the film, as Fivre is about to continue, Cowslip appears again, having presumably heard everything Fivre was saying. He says some of the Warren rabbits are gathering and suggesting stories. But where are they gathering? The group are in the largest burrow in this warren, or at least it is in the book. Silver suggests Hazel tells about their journey and how they came to the warren. We see some urgent whispering between Cowslip and two other rabbits from which we pick up the phrase, "no harm in that." After an awkward pause, Hazel suggests Dandelion tells the story of flayrah. In the book, of course, this leads to chapter 15, the story of the king's lettuce, but here Cowslip is not so polite, commenting that flayrah and his trickery don't really mean very much to them, adding in a wonderfully upper-class British moment of passive aggression how charming such stories are. Hazel replies that rabbits will always need tricks, and we see Bigwig frowning and nodding in agreement, but Cowslip disagrees. And here we lead straight into this film's equivalent of chapter 16, Silverweed. Only here there is no Silverweed, the poet, to save time. Cowslip merely refers to him as one of our poets. After saying that rabbits need dignity and the will to accept their fate, a line stolen directly from Silverweed, as he initially appears in the book, he offers to quote him after the visitors politely agree, in contrast to Cowslip's lack of manners. And so Cowslip launches into a summarised quotation of the poem from the book. He misses out the first stanza on the theme of the wind and misses out the first part of the second stanza, quote, "The stream is running, running over the gravel, through the brook climb, the kingcups, the blue and gold of spring," end quote. He begins with, "Where are you going, stream? Far, far away." He then cuts out, "Beyond the heather, sliding away all night," going straight on to, "Take me with you, stream." Then cuts to the line from the third stanza on the theme of autumn leaves, "Take me on your dark journey." Then he cuts to a heavy paraphrase of the fourth and last stanza. "Lord Frith, oh take me far away to the hearts of light, the silence. I give you my breath, my life, the silence." It is an effective summary of the original, much longer poem. During it, we are seen Cowslip declaiming and brushing his ear as the camera pans up towards the strange colours and textures of this warren's ceiling. We then see Hazel and Bigwig looking at each other quizzically, then Silver and Pipkin, the former looking nonplussed and even bored, the latter confused and maybe a bit frightened by what he is hearing. And then as Cowslip reaches the clear reference to death and being taken away, we see a terrified and disgusted Fivre, his ears low, before cutting to a shot of the beam of light coming through the hole in the roof mentioned earlier. Only now there are moths or some such flying insects in the beam. Is this a callback to the bee which scared Fivre, resulting in him bumping into the notice board that gave him his premonition of death? And to the bee we saw that almost seemed to lead Violet out of the bean field to her death at the hands of a hawk? Certainly in this film, when death is near, flying insects seem to make an appearance. As Cowslip finishes his poem, the camera pans down to him at the end of the beam of light, with the horrified Fivre looking at him. And then, with a sudden light musical theme cutting across the eerie music we've been hearing, Fivre is off with, "I've had enough." Cowslip gives him a brief, angry look. In the book, Fivre's exit in reaction to the poem is a lot less controlled and more of a frenzied panic. Hazel and Bigwig then intercept him before he can even leave the warren and force him to spend a night there, after he spends his first night outside under a yew tree. Significantly, yew trees with their poisoned berries are often associated with death. Then, during that second night, Fivre goes missing, and what follows happens after Hazel and Bigwig go looking for him. But here, as ever, we are in a hurry, so they pursue Fivre outside, having seemingly not spent even a night there, and they do not enter this strange warren again. We see Fivre making his way towards a hedge line. Later we will realise how lucky he was not to go through it. Bigwig briefly tries to hold Hazel back from going after him, but he goes anyway. Fivre runs around the edge of the hedge, followed by Hazel. Hazel intercepts him on the other side by a small tree on a rise. Is this intended to be a nod to the yew tree that he spends the night under in the book? Fiver has time to say he's going away to the hills, to which Hazel responds he will die if he goes on his own, but Fiver says Hazel is closer to death than he is. Before anything else can be said, Bigwig arrives, again going around the edge of the hedge. This is not the initially patient Bigwig of the book, there simply isn't time. He is instantly angry and seemingly turns up just to tell Fiver what he thinks of him, which he promptly does in a manner that is just about as unpleasant as Bigwig gets while not actually fighting. Fiver cowers in the face of this verbal onslaught. In the book, Bigwig only gets like this after Hazel makes it clear he has decided not to be so harsh on Fiver and that he may go a little way with him. It is the prospect of Hazel putting himself at risk that produces the verbal onslaught there, and there is no hint of Fiver cowering. His strength of character seems diminished here by that reaction, and I assume the filmmakers just felt they had to have him react somehow. A timid reaction must have seemed right at the time, but it really isn't. This is a Fiver who lacks the courage of his convictions and who instantly backs down in the face of brute force, not the Fiver who later tells the sadist Vervain to his face that he is sorry for his death. In any case, with a promise to make sure everyone has had enough of Fiver, as in the book, Bigwig runs off, but through the hedge this time rather than around it. And instantly, there is a strangled cry. Comparison with the book. In the original book, the rabbits spend 2 nights in Cowslip's warren, during which they interact extensively with its inhabitants, and we meet the first rabbit to join them who wasn't from Sandalford, the hapless but ultimately redeemed Strawberry. But here there is no time for such detail, and in the film they appear to be there for, well, it could possibly be 1 night or just part of a day. There is an implication of a passage of time at one point, but we cannot be sure how much has passed. But what is certain is there is no Strawberry here, and I find his absence sad but probably necessary. There was simply no time for him with this speed of storytelling. Here, an extended stay during which there is hospitality and storytelling, and during which Fiver's misgivings mature more gradually, becomes what seems to be an hour or 2 at most, unless the flayrah we see the group eat in the rotating shot is meant to be the next sitting. In this version, their host weirdness is up front and has to be in order for Fiver's reaction to develop more quickly. In any case, the outcome is the same. Something truly awful has just happened to Bigwig. Next time, we find out what has happened to Bigwig in the first truly shocking scene of the film.